Thank you so much for joining us for the first of 4 sessions where we're going to be talking about what it means to approach death with our eyes wide open, connected deeply in our hearts to each other and to the people that we care about, and connected to what God is doing in all of our lives. We have the 4 sessions are outlined on the back of your page, but tonight we are so lucky to have Phil Rose with us. He's the Director of Spiritual Life at Episcopal Homes, and he's going to be more eloquent about what he does than I am, so I'll get off the stage here in just a moment. I'm glad that you're here. After Phil speaks, we have a short public service announcement from Linda, and then we'll have a few moments, and by moments I mean like actual minutes, of silence to process, percolate a little bit. There's some questions to think about, and then I'll ask you to turn to a couple of reasonably friendly-looking people near you and talk about those questions. And I want to say right now, this is a tender topic. And if you don't need to talk about those questions with your neighbors tonight, it's okay for you to suddenly have to go to the bathroom or go sit somewhere else, or your phone will ring and you'll need to step out and make a phone call. It's okay. Like, you're not obligated to go all the way down into the depths tonight if that's not what you need to do here tonight. But if you're here tonight, it's probably because this topic is one that you feel compelled to listen to wise guides talk about and to join in. So I hope you'll take time for those questions, whether they're with your neighbors here or just on your own. Phil, we're so glad you're here. Do you have everything technology-wise?
Good.
Great.
Yes,
okay, perfect. I'm off stage.
Okay. Can you hear me through this? Check, check, check. We're good? Okay. Well, it is indeed a great pleasure to be here tonight. It's a special day for me, and 9 years ago today, my father died. And I hadn't thought of that when Susan invited me to do this tonight. And the other part that's very interesting about that is my name is Phil Rose, obviously, and today is the feast day of St. Philip and St. James. So that was a very moving thing for me that obviously when my father died. My father died at home, which was great. He had hospice. He waited too long. I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a bit. To take advantage of all the wonderful things that hospice has, but he had a good death. He really did. It was wonderful. He was with Park Nicollet Hospice, and they did a fabulous job, and his family was all gathered around him. So today on the Feast of St. Philip and St. James, I am honored to be with you tonight. So I am the Director of Spiritual Life at Episcopal Homes. We are fortunate enough to have 4 chaplains at Episcopal Homes, and we often have a couple of seminarians as well. This year we had 2 seminarians that did 8 months with us, doing their pastoral education, their clinical pastoral education as chaplains. And we usually have about 6 to 8 Roman Catholic. They are so young and so earnest. They're Catholic seminarians from the St. Thomas, so they are 19 and 20 years old. But they are deeply loved by our residents because they bring them communion, and it's wonderful. So when I became a priest, when I was going through the discernment process, I am going to sit if that's all right. When I went through the discernment process, I went through St. John the Baptist, just across the lake. And the one thing that my discernment committee had said was, you are really not built to be the rector of the parish on the corner. You're called to something else. Didn't know what that was. Didn't really have a sense of it. And then there was this thing called clinical pastoral education that you're invited to do, meaning you have to do it. So I went to United for my first season of that, and I thought, this is a box, I'm going to check it and get out of here. Anyway, I fell in love with it and knew that that's where I was meant to be. So then I went on to do a residency at Abbott Northwestern, where I got very comfortable with talking about death and dying. As a healthcare chaplain, along with my other colleagues in the area, we have a unique role in society. We think about and talk about death a lot, and we are advocates for a good death. I mentioned that my father had a good death, and in a little bit I'm going to ask you to think about what does that mean for you, and that'll be a question that you'll talk about later. Of course, different cultures have different ways of thinking about death, and in the United States, we deal with it by not dealing with it at all, of course. We don't talk about it, and yet, you know what, I can't see enough, folks. I am going to stand up. Yet our entertainment, our media, in the form of games, movies, television shows, are immersed in death. We are surrounded by death, but we don't have many healthy ways of talking about it or thinking about it. As someone who is passionate about raising the level and deepening the depth of the way that we have these conversations about death and dying, it is really great to be here because a lot of places don't do this, and this is incredible. Thank you, Susan. And what a turnout. It's fantastic. I saw people over there, but they're not people. So as you know, there are a lot of euphemisms that we use to talk about death. I'm sure you can think of many of them. The one that is particularly jarring to me and my colleagues at Episcopal homes is when people say that someone expired. If only, I don't know where the expiration date is on me, but we're in a Christian tradition, and its rituals, scriptures, and sacraments do not shy away from talking about death. We begin the season of Lent with the words that we just heard earlier a little bit, being reminded that we are dust, and to dust we shall return. A not so subtle reminder of the fact that we are going to die. We pray each Sunday about the death, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus, the one that we follow. The rite of baptism, and it's great that we have water here, the rite of baptism is the ritual of dying and rising. It is especially an immersion baptism. For many years, I worked at a church that had a large baptismal font. When I started in ministry, I was Roman Catholic, and we had about 12,000 members, if you can imagine. It was insane. But we had a baptismal font that was a full immersion baptismal font. And at the Easter Vigil, we typically would baptize 10 to 15 people. And to see that full immersion is just a really powerful reminder of that. I also had an interesting reminder of that when I was invited by a friend of mine, a priest friend of mine, who invited me to take photographs at their Easter Vigil. And his practice was to bring in a casket and line it so that it didn't leak, but they would fill it with water, and they would do, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, into the casket. A very visual reminder of what that baptism is all about. Our faith brings us comfort and hope in the midst of death. And Susan and I have a colleague and friend, Dana Faith Strandy, who is a priest in the diocese. She actually started her ministry career at the same church that I worked at. She was an intern under me at, it was Pax Christi out in Eden Prairie. But a couple of weeks ago, Dana's 20-year-old daughter Amara died. She, after a very long journey, very difficult journey with cancer. And when Dana let people know about Amaras' death, she wrote the most beautiful thing, and I just wanted to share it with you. Dear friends and family, we will not say that Amara passed, for it was not an easy and gentle effort. We will not say we lost Amara, as we were never careless with her. We did not displace her. Amara died. She died this morning at 5:25 a.m. Brave and valiant, she lived right up until she died. She had done all the treatments and surgeries she could. She did not go on hospice to die. She went on hospice to fully live. She squeezed every last drop of joy out of every second of her life, right up to the last day. From her legislative advocacy for a Minnesota environment free from toxins, to her composing songs about her life experience with cancer, to singing in the Minnesota chorale with the Minnesota Orchestra 2 weeks ago, Amara lived big and bold. She loved her communities and went the distance so others would hopefully be spared, and if not spared, at least provided with comfort on the way. Our Amara died. It is only through facing the reality of death that we can face the promise of new life. I am the resurrection, and I am the life, says the Lord. Whoever has faith in me shall have life, even though she die. And everyone who has life and has committed herself to me in faith shall not die forever. Sing our love with fully restored voice. Dance our girl with the agility and lightness of your body. Play the piano, our beauty, with the freedom of both hands upon the keyboard. We honor the holy that lives within you, our precious daughter and sister. You are beloved. We love you forever. We will see you in dreamland. Dana, Michael, and Nora. Whew. That is so deeply moving. And it's a family that has a very, very deep faith. And Amara had a tenacity about her that was incredible. And she lived deeply and she lived well. And I think a lot of that, I knew Amara just a little bit before she got her diagnosis. But I think there was a sense at which knowing that she was going to die made her live even deeper and jump in full strength with everything she had. I mentioned different traditions do different things. In the Buddhist tradition, they believe that you should think about your death 5 times a day. And the idea is not, of course, to be morbid, but it is quite the opposite. It is to remind you to live a good life. Live a good life in the here and now, right now. There's an app, and I have a few folks that have gotten this app. It's a little crazy. The name is particularly interesting. It's called We Croak. You know, there it is. It's honest. And it sends you a message 5 times a day with that's some kind of message that will remind you of the fact that you're going to die. And I saved some of those today, the ones that I got today. So, yeah, which direction is it in my phone? It's not that way. Let's see. Life is an ever-rolling wheel, and every day is the right one. Happy the one, and happy. Okay, it's in male language, so I'm just going to read it because it's too much work to translate it. Happy the man, and happy he alone, he who can call today his own. He who secure within can say, tomorrow do thy worst, for I have lived today. This showed up on my watch. Reminder, don't forget, you're going to die. I believe that we are solely responsible for our choices, and we have to accept the consequences of every deed, word, and thought throughout our lifetime. That was Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross as one of the messages. Not that I agree with all of them, but so that's an interesting thing. This series is called A Beginner's Guide to the End, and the title comes from a book by B.J. Miller. B.J. Miller and Shoshana Berger. B.J. Miller is one of my heroes. I'm not sure if he was the founder of the Zen Hospice Center, but he was a palliative care doc at the Zen Hospice Center, and he is amazing. And I want you to hear some of what he has to say. So let's see. As I said, the series is called Beginner's Guide to the End. There are other books as well, including one of my favorites is I'm Dead, Now What? That tells people what to do with your money, your stuff, and frankly, you after you're dead. But this book is really quite incredible, and this talk is called What Really Matters at the End of Life. And the fact that it has over 18 million views says a lot about it. I'm probably responsible for 100 of those. And here comes the 101st. I'm only showing a couple pieces of it, but...
Well, we all need a reason to wake up. For me, it just took 11,000 volts. I know you're too polite to ask, so I will tell you. One night, sophomore year of college, just back from Thanksgiving holiday, a few of my friends and I were horsing around. We decided to climb atop a parked commuter train. It was just sitting there. The wires had run overhead. Somehow that seemed like a great idea at the time. We'd certainly done stupider things. I scurried up the ladder on the back, and when I stood up, the electrical current entered my arm, blew down and out my feet, and that was that. Would you believe that watch still works? Takes a licking. My father wears it now in solidarity. That night began my formal relationship with death. My death. And it also began my long run as a patient. It's a good word. It means one who suffers. I guess we're all patients. Now, the American healthcare system has more than its fair share of dysfunction, to match its brilliance, to be sure. I'm a physician now, a hospice and palliative medicine doc, so I've seen care from both sides. And believe me, most everyone who goes into healthcare really means well. I mean, truly. But we who work in it are also unwitting agents for a system that too often does not serve. Why? There's actually a pretty easy answer to that question. And it explains a lot. Because healthcare was designed with diseases, not people, at its center. Which is to say, of course, it was badly designed. And nowhere are the effects of bad design more heartbreaking or the opportunity for good design more compelling than at the end of life, where things are so distilled, concentrated. There's no do-overs. My purpose today is to reach out across disciplines and invite design thinking into this big conversation. That is, to bring intention and creativity to the experience of dying. We have a monumental opportunity in front of us before a universal, one of the few universal issues as individuals as well as a civil society, to rethink and redesign how it is we die. So, let's begin at the end. For most people, the scariest thing about death isn't being dead, it's dying, suffering. It's a key distinction. And to get underneath this, it can be very helpful to tease out suffering which is necessary, as it is, from suffering we can change. The former is a natural, essential part of life, part of the deal. And to this we are called to make space, adjust, grow. It can be really good to realize forces larger than ourselves. They bring proportionality, like a cosmic right-sizing.
So the TED Talks are technology, entertainment, and design, which I think they actually changed. At some point I thought it was education and design, but his theme here is, how do we design a better way to die? How do we think about that for ourselves? And there are a couple of things that jumped out at me in this first clip. One is, nowhere are the effects of bad design more heartbreaking or the opportunity for good design more compelling at the end of life, where things are so distilled and concentrated. And this is something I'm going to ask you to think about later. What would you redesign about death and dying in the system, or closer to home in your family, or you personally? What would that look like? Then he also says, for most people, the scariest thing about dying isn't being dead, it's the suffering. That is so true with the people that I work with at Episcopal Homes. By the time they have arrived at Episcopal Homes, most folks realize they're going to die, and they've begun to accept that. But it's not being dead that scares them. It's the process of dying, and will it be painful? Will it be agonizing? And it reminds me of something that my father loved to say, and thinking of him today. It's been said that people's number one fear in life is public speaking. And so most people would rather be in the casket than the one giving the eulogy. So that fits that very well. The other thing that he says at the end there, he's talking about it can be really good to realize forces larger than ourselves. They bring proportionality, like a cosmic right-sizing. There's nothing like a pandemic to do that as well. And that certainly has affected the way we all think about death and dying. And it was so sad to see how we had to deal with that at Episcopal Homes during the pandemic. Okay, next clip.
In my work, over the years, I've known many people who were ready to go, ready to die. And not because they had found some final peace or transcendence, but because they were so repulsed by what their lives had become. In a word, cut off, or ugly. There are already record numbers of us living with chronic and terminal illness and into ever older age. And we are nowhere near ready or prepared for this silver tsunami. We need an infrastructure dynamic enough to handle these seismic shifts in our population. Now is a time to create something new, something vital. I know we can because we have to. The alternative is just unacceptable. And the key ingredients are known: policy, education and training, systems, bricks and mortar. We have tons of input for designers of all stripes to work with. We know, for example, from research, what's most important to people who are closer to death: comfort, feeling unburdened, and unburdening to those they love, existential peace, and a sense of wonderment and spirituality. Over Zen Hospice's nearly 30 years, we've learned much more from our residents in subtle detail. Little things aren't so little. Take Jeanette. She finds it harder to breathe one day to the next due to ALS. Well, guess what? She wants to start smoking again. And French cigarettes, if you please. Not out of some self-destructive bent, but to feel her lungs filled while she has them. Priorities change. Or Kate. She just wants to know her dog Austin is lying at the foot of her bed, his cold muzzle against her dry skin. Instead of more chemotherapy coursing through her veins, she's done that. Sensuous, aesthetic gratification, where in a moment, in an instant, we are rewarded for just being. So much of it comes down to loving our time by way of the senses, by way of the body, the very thing doing the living and the dying. Probably the most poignant room in a Zen Hospice guest house is our kitchen, which is a little strange when you realize that so many of our residents can eat very little, if anything at all. But we realize we are providing sustenance on several levels. Smell, symbolic plane. Seriously, with all the heavy-duty stuff happening under our roof, one of the most tried and true interventions we know of is to bake cookies. As long as we have our senses, even just one, we have at least the possibility of accessing what makes us feel human, connected. Imagine the ripples of this notion for the millions of people living and dying with dementia. Primal sensorial delights that say the things we don't have words for. Impulses that make us stay present. No need for a past or a future. So, if teasing unnecessary suffering out of the system was our first design cue, then tending to dignity by way of the senses, by way of the body, the aesthetic realm, is design cue number 2. Now this gets us quickly to the third and final bit for today. Namely, we need to lift our sights, to set our sights on well-being. That life can become, and health care can become about making life more wonderful, rather than just less horrible. Beneficence. Here, this gets right at the distinction between a disease-centered and a patient or human-centered model of care. And here is where caring becomes a creative, generative, even playful act. Play may sound like a funny word here, but it's also one of our highest forms of adaptation. Consider every major compulsory effort it takes to be human. The need for food is birth cuisine. The need for shelter has given rise to architecture. The need for cover, fashion. And for being subjected to the clock, well, we invented music. So, since dying is a necessary part of life, what might we create with this fact? By play, I am in no way suggesting that we take a light approach to dying or that we mandate any particular way of dying. There are mountains of sorrow that cannot move, and one way or another, we will all kneel there. Rather, I am asking we make space, physical, psychic room, to allow life to play itself all the way out, so that rather than just getting out of the way, aging and dying can become a process of crescendo through to the end.
So he talks about being creative and generative and even a playful act around how we adapt to new ways of dying. It's beginning to happen. I have seen a lot of it. Like I said, the fact that this has over 16 million views. The fact that there are things, people are referring to funerals, that you have fun at a funeral. We at Episcopal Homes have done something called a Death Cafe. It's very similar to what we're doing tonight. Have some food, have a conversation. The one that we did there was called Death Over Drinks. That's a creative way of thinking about it. One of the wonderful things that we are experiencing at Episcopal Homes is the existence of death doulas, people who will accompany one another through the process. Another way, we talked about that We Croak app, another way to think about death on the regular is to work at Episcopal Homes. We have about 120 people that die at Episcopal Homes each year. That's more than 2 a week. From our campus that will die. The Spiritual Life team is here to help people have a good death and with the dying process, at the time of death, with funerals and celebrations of life to follow up. And we've also built into our training for the people that work with our residents conversations around death. so that we don't shy away from it, so that we will face it. We don't downplay how difficult it can be for our staff, and it was really difficult during the pandemic. It was devastating to have people die. We had about 17 people die from COVID. I did last rites over Zoom with a nurse with an iPad in the room. It's just awful. We've also had situations where a household at Episcopal Homes typically has maybe 15 to 20 people in a pod, if you will. And we've had situations where 7, 8 people die in a couple of weeks. That's really difficult for staff who didn't sign up to be chaplains. So we have ways of talking that through. And the experience of the pandemic has only increased for me the need to build a pro-death culture, to help us get over our fear of talking about it so that we can design better ways for us to deal with death. I think, how are we doing? Should I leave it there for the time being?
Is there one more nugget?
There's one more nugget. Yes. I have been increasingly sad, probably well before the pandemic, probably 2 or 3 years before the pandemic, when I see people that have decided that, well, I don't want a memorial, I don't want a funeral, I don't want anything, just cremate me and off we go. And I have to remind people that it's not for you. And that's an issue. But for me, that says something deeper about things that are missing, connections to the spiritual. And so I think we really need to think about that. We do a simple procession of honor, we call it, when someone dies. And it is incredibly powerful. And for, unfortunately, a lot of the people that live there, that may be the only time that someone has stopped to honor their life, or to celebrate their life and honor their death. We pause at the door. We have a beautiful coverlet that hand-painted butterfly. We have 7 of those around campus in case we have multiple deaths all at once, which hasn't happened. But every location has one so that they can place it on the body as it leaves the building. And it is so powerful to be able to do that. And it's also a reminder for those living there that we will honor you in your death as well. So I think we can just leave it there. I do have something at the very end, perhaps. Thanks.
Phil?
Yeah, you're welcome.
Linda, would you come speak for just a moment? Phil dropped this phrase a moment ago, and maybe we could steal your mic for Linda, actually. Phil dropped this phrase about death doulas a few moments ago, and Linda Lyman is a member of our congregation who serves as a death doula, and she's going to talk to us about it for about 3 minutes.
Madonna, am I on?
You're on now.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Keep talking.
Keep talking. I can't hear myself, so how about now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So I'm Linda Lyman. I am a member of the congregation. I've been a hospice volunteer, both over in Phoenix, Arizona, where I used to live, and here in the Valley. And last year, I started doing death doula work. And so the difference is a hospice companion or respite provider stays one-on-one with the patient and, spends time, visits, learns about them, gives their primary care provider a break. A doula is someone who's involved when somebody is actively dying. And I got into this work because my mother-in-law passed away in my presence, and I thought it was the greatest gift I'd ever received. So I know of which I speak. I've been through birth and I've been through death a couple of times with other patients, and I'm telling you, death is pretty amazing. So a doula assists a dying person and their loved ones during and after death. And so we help ease that transition. So we provide emotional and physical support. We provide education about the dying process. We prepare people for what's to come, what's the next step. And we provide guidance while people are grieving. We also advocate for the dying person's wishes. I don't know, keep losing this thing. Okay, here we go. So let me give you an example. I had a patient several months ago who had had 3 children, and her husband had predeceased her. One of her daughters had died of cancer. The patient was actively dying of cancer. Her other daughter, she was estranged from, and the 4th one had stage 4 lung cancer. She had nobody to sit there with her. I didn't know her from Adam, but that's what I signed up to do, so I went. And so what I learned is she wrote poetry. And she had this little book of poetry, and they were all corny little poems. They were so faithful, but they were corny little poems, and I read those to her for hours on end, or other poetry. She loved to sing. So I wrote down, when the music therapist came in, I wrote down the list of songs that she likes to sing. And so then one other time when I was there, I got the other music therapist to play those songs, so I played them on my phone. That's that kind of stuff that helps ease that transition. Her daughter stopped by one day after therapy, and we just sat there for an hour and talked, because I've lost both my parents and both my in-laws, and I have some perspective on that. It's not your perspective, it wasn't her perspective, but I was able to share things that I had learned, and one of the things I always share is that my father-in-law said to me during his death process, he said, "Linda, it takes a long time to die." So remember that. The other thing was I was able to put water on her mouth. I was able to put cream, she's all skin and bones. I was able to put cream in her neck. I was able to advocate with the nurse to take the cannula out. She doesn't need oxygen anymore. She's, it was bothering her. So I guess it's just a process of being present and listening to that person's wishes and being there for them. And that's what I'd say about it.
If someone had questions about that or wanted to find out more, would you be open to a conversation offline? Yeah, okay. On your paper, and if you need one, I'll bring you one, there are some questions there where it says table talk. You'll notice there are no tables in here except for this altar, right, which is also a really good table to talk around. But I'd like to invite you to take just 2 or 3 minutes in quiet to jot down a few thoughts about those questions, so that when we turn and find a reasonably friendly stranger or couple of strangers to chat with, you've got some thoughts prepared.